My father died in July of last year. He was an alcoholic, mostly estranged from myself and my brothers, and, as far as I understand, generally manipulative. There is a lot of backstory and baggage, some of which I might cover tonight, but that should be enough context to get things started. From an early age, I knew he drank, and he drank too much. I knew alcohol was a major factor in who he was and his behavior and actions. It was an easy choice to never drink as a result. In spite of touring with multiple punk bands, going to art school twice, and even living a year in the brew city of Milwaukee, I have never been drunk or even imbibed alcohol. I would usually say something like, I don't like not being in total control of myself, which is mostly true, but it's far more reasonable to say that my father is the reason I do not drink. This is a ritual in which I am attempting to connect with my father in a way I never could. By breaking my self-imposed sobriety, I am attempting to gain a semblance of empathy with the father I lost years before he died. Perhaps if I understand the physical feelings associated with the substance and undergo them myself, I can gain some sort of understanding or insight into what made him who he was. Shortly after his death, I wrote a series of letters he would never be able to respond to. In that process, I recognized I wasn't apathetic, but in fact angry at him and our lack of relationship. There are always two sides to each story, of course, but as a child, it was not my job to understand the nuances surrounding depression and addiction. By the time I could understand them, I could find no way to start the conversation with him without him trying to elicit pity from me. He never got it, for the record. The morning I told my husband I felt numb. My mom had called well after he had gone to sleep the night before to deliver the news. My brothers took care of the affairs, something I am forever grateful for, but struggle with expressing to them directly. Being over 1,000 miles away enabled an even stronger sense of emotional distance from myself. Maybe I'll tell them one day, and they'll understand my sincerity. The Awesome Dad Cheat Sheet, 18 Fatherhood Tips They Should Have Handed Out at the Delivery Room, by Leo Babauta for theartofmanliness.com, originally published on August 3rd, 2008. Being a father can be a wonderful thing, once you get past all the gross stuff, all the stressful events, the loss of privacy, and the bewildering numbers of ways you can screw it up. But other than those few things, fatherhood is wonderful. Every dad has fears that he won't be a great dad, that he'll mess up, that he'll be a failure. It comes with the job. Unfortunately, what doesn't come with the job is a simple set of instructions. As guys, we often will skip the manual, figuring we can wing it. But when things go wrong, it's nice to have that manual to go back to. Fatherhood needs that manual. And while, as the father of 6 children, you might say that I'm qualified to write such a manual, it's not true. I'm winging it like everyone else. However, I've been a father for more than 15 years, and with 6 kids, I've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't, what's important and what you can safely ignore, unlike that odd grating sound coming from your engine. What follows are the fatherhood tips I wish they'd passed out to me upon the delivery of my first child. It would have helped a ton. I hope they help you become an even more awesome dad than you already are. Feel free to refer back to them as a cheat sheet anytime you need some help. Number 1, cherish your time with them. One thing that will amaze you is how quickly the years will fly. My oldest daughter is 15, which means I have 3 short years with her before she leaves the nest. That's not enough time. The time you have with them is short and precious. Make the most of it. Spend as much time as you can with them and make it quality, loving time. Try to be present as much as possible while you're with them too. Don't let your mind drift away, as they can sense that. Number 2, it gets easier. Others may have different experiences, but I've always found the first couple of months is the most difficult. When the baby is brand new and wants to feed at all hours of the night, and you often have sleepless nights and walk around all day like zombies, it gets easier as they get a regular sleeping pattern. The first couple of years are also a lot more demanding than later years. And as they hit middle school, they'll become almost functioning independent adults. It gets easier, trust me. Number 3, don't look at anything as mom duties. Share responsibilities. While there are a lot of good things from our grandparents' day that we should bring back, the traditional dad-mom split of parenting duties isn't one of them. Some men still look at certain duties as mom duties, but don't be one of those dads. Get involved in everything and share the load with your baby mama. Changing diapers, giving baths, getting them dressed, and even feeding them. You can give them breast milk in a bottle. My parents got divorced when I was 8 years old. My mother moved us from Mount Prospect, a small northwestern suburb of Chicago, to her hometown of Omaha, Nebraska. We had spent many summers vacationing visiting my grandmother and ended up buying a house just down the hill from her. Acclimating to the new place as a result was surreal. I had grown up playing on the playground that I now spent recess at. The year before the move was also full of change. Outside the inevitable stress that is being a child in a breaking home, my elementary school was displaced for a full year while they built their new building. I spent a full school year in an alien building, then a few months in another alien building, this time being told this is your new school, only to leave it for another somewhat alien space 3 months later. Looking back, the divorce itself was some weird form of normalcy. My father never came with us on our summer vacations to visit my grandmother in Omaha, or our cousins who had just moved to Plano, Texas, or anywhere else that we may have gone. Normal to me was my mom sleeping in her bedroom and my dad on the couch downstairs. The split in our family unit was normal, or expected, or perhaps it was just inevitable. Occasional arguments followed by my dad living in an apartment, then moving back in, then finally breaking off with my mom. She originally wanted to move to Plano with our cousins and paternal grandparents, but upon his threatening legal action due to distance, she settled on Omaha. He never had joint custody, of course, but my mom didn't want to risk it. Eventually, he did join us in Omaha. He spent at least 15 years living in the same apartment that he would eventually be evicted from. What did intimacy between my father and myself look like back then? Hell, a better question is, what does intimacy in my family unit look like in general? That's probably a different topic, for a different script altogether. Number 4, love conquers all. This one sounds corny, but it should be at the center of your dad operating philosophy. Above all, show your children love. When you're upset, instead of yelling, show them love. When they are upset, show them love. When they least expect it, show them love. Everything else is just details. Number 5, kids like making decisions. While it is easier to be an authoritarian parent, what you're teaching your child is to submit to orders no matter what. Instead, teach your child to make decisions and he'll grow up much more capable and happier. Kids like freedom and decisions just like any other human beings. Your job is to allow them to make decisions, but within the parameters that you set. Give them a choice between 2 healthy breakfasts, for example, rather than allowing them to eat a bowl of sugar if they choose to. Number 6, a little patience goes a long way. As a parent, I know as well as anyone how easy it is to lose your patience and temper. However, allowing yourself to react in anger or frustration is not the best thing for your child, and you must remember that. That means you need to take a deep breath or a walk when you start to lose your patience. Practice patience with your child and your relationship, and your child will benefit over the long run. Number 7, sense of humor required. There will be times when your child does something that might make you blow your lid. Writing in crayon all over the walls is a good one, as is dumping some kind of liquid on your couch, or sneaking out and taking your car to meet up with friends. While you need to teach your child not to do these things, it's better to just laugh at the humor of the situation. I've learned to do this more often, as it helps me keep my sanity. My father met my husband about 6 or so months before his death at my brother's wedding. In spite of trying to contextualize or give warning, I don't think he was fully prepared to see my father's gaunt features in an ill-fitted suit, smelling of cigarettes and looking a solid 15 years his senior. I have no clue how he was informed of my queerness. I would assume my mom told him at some point or another, but honestly I can't imagine how or when the conversation could have come up. Even with my dramatic coming out in a column published by my high school's newspaper, I don't know if she took the opportunity to tell him or not. Yet I know he knew. He knew before we moved to Connecticut, before we got married, before I started graduate school. He had some inkling. It was unspoken. I don't think my father was stupid. He made countless dumb decisions, yes, but he knew he was doing what he was doing most of the time. I can assume he never mentioned anything about his youngest son being a faggot, or hassled me for it, or otherwise brought it up, because he didn't want me to use it to cut him off, even more so than my passive-aggressive Midwestern identity already had. By the time I was in high school, I had separated myself emotionally from him. He wasn't dumb enough to risk me not even saying hi to him from time to time. Looking back, I can't even remember having any semblance of serious conversation with him surrounding anything. Politics, religion, current affairs, what I wanted to be when I grew up. The communication between us was always so superficial and lacking any substance. Further analysis reveals I've never had similar conversations with either of my brothers, which seemingly contextualizes a good chunk of our relationships to one another. Read to them. Number 8, read to them often. Whether you're a reader or not, reading to your children from the time they're babies onward is crucial. It gets them in the habit of reading and prepares them for a lifetime of learning. It gives you some special time together and become a tradition your child will cherish. I read with all my children, from my 2-year-old and my 15-year-old, and love every word we read together. Number 9, don't be an absent dad. The biggest mistake that dads make are not being there for their children. Always set aside time each day and each week for your children. Don't let anything violate this sacred time. And those big moments in your child's life, a soccer game, a music recital, a science fair, do your very best to be there. It means the world. Number 10, let them play. Kids really develop through playing. And while it might seem obvious, you should allow them as much free time as possible. That's aside from TV and video games. See below. Aside from reading, aside from anything structured or educational, just let them play and make things up and have fun. Number 11, spark their imagination. Free play, mentioned above, is the best way to develop the imagination, but sometimes you can provide a little spark. Play with your kids. Creating forts, dressing up as ninjas, role-playing, imagining your explorers or characters in a movie or book. The possibilities are endless, and you'll have as much fun as they will. I never knew what my father thought of me wanting to become an artist. He wasn't paying for my college education, so maybe he didn't think it was any of his business. I think I gave him a print for Christmas my freshman year of college, if I remember correctly. As I get older and memories and thoughts start to blur, it's hard to pinpoint reality from intention. I certainly remember matting a print with the intention to give to my father, but I don't even remember what it was. Probably a still life dry point. The few serious conversations I've had with my family members regarding my career have been brief, never curt, but polite. I teach, I curate, I make, etc. I don't make to sell, So as a result, there is an inherent disconnect between why anybody would even think about being the kind of artist I am. Hell, I'm sure they wouldn't even consider half the things I do art. I distinctly remember very little conversation surrounding both my BFA and MFA shows. I wonder if any of them are watching this. If so, I'm sorry. This is what I make. It's unapologetic, it's mostly sad, and it's agonizingly vulnerable for me to do. Don't take it personally either. I do these things knowing full well I would have healthier relationships in general if I could actually have the hypothetical conversations my work proposes. I digress. I don't know what my father's relationship to art was, or if he even understood what it means to me, why I would sink thousands of dollars and actively choose a career that is incredibly low paying. On top of that, could he understand why I would then go and choose a form that isn't even commodifiable? Honestly, some days I don't even know if I do, but that's for another existential crisis altogether. Number 12, limit TV and video games. I'm not saying you have to be Amish or anything, but too much of this type of entertainment keeps them from doing more imaginative playing, from reading, from getting outside to exercise. I recommend an hour a day of media time, but you can find the amount that works for you and your family. Number 13, learn the firm no. While I'm all for giving kids the freedom to choose and for free play and lots of other freedoms, there should be limits. Parents who don't set boundaries are going to have children with behavior problems, who have problems when they grow up. And it's not good to always say yes. It's also not good for the child to say no at first and then cave in when they throw a temper tantrum or beg or plead. Teach them that your no is firm, but only say no when you really feel it is a boundary you need to set. Number 14, model good behavior. It's one thing to tell your child that she should do what she should do, but to say one thing and do another just ruins the message. In fact, the real lesson your child will learn is what you do. Your child is always watching you to learn appropriate behavior. Excessive drinking or smoking or drug use by parents, for example, will become ingrained in the child's head. Bad manners, inconsiderate behavior, sloppy habits, anger, and a negative attitude, laziness, and greed. All these behaviors will rub off on your child. Instead, model the behavior you'd like your child to learn. Number 15, treat their mother with respect, always. Some fathers can be abusive towards their spouse, and that will lead to a cycle of abuse when the child grows up. But beyond physical or verbal abuse, there's the milder sin against the child's mother, disrespectful behavior. If you treat your child's mother with disrespect, your child will not only learn that behavior, but grow up with insecurities and other emotional problems. Treat your child's mother with respect at all times. My father cheated on my mom a few times if I've assembled context clues properly. It wasn't the only reason, but I know it was a major reason why they divorced. I didn't know at the time, of course, but even before I found out, I knew it was his fault. I knew it had nothing to do with myself or my brothers or my mom. I knew he was to blame. And that's not even the result of some bias ingrained by spending significantly more time bonding with my mother. It was an unspoken, mutually understood fact for everyone in the family that our dissolution from the nuclear familial unit was his doing and his doing alone. Number 16, let them be themselves. Many parents try to mold their child into the person they want their child to be, even if the child's personality doesn't fit that mold. Instead, instill good behaviors and values in your child, but give your child freedom to be himself. Children, like all humans, have quirks and different personalities. Let those personalities flourish. Love your child for who he is, not who you want him to be. Number 17, teach them independence. From an early age, teach your children to do things for themselves, gradually letting them be more independent as they grow older. While it may seem difficult and time-consuming to teach your child to do something that you could do much faster yourself, it's worth it in the long run, for the child's self-confidence and also in terms of how much you have to do. For example, my kids know how to wash their own dishes, help clean the house, clean their rooms, fold and put away laundry, shower, groom, dress themselves, and much more, saving a lot of time and work for me. Even my 2-year-old knows how to pick things up when she's told to do so. Number 18, stand together with mom. It's no good to have one parent say one thing, just to have the other contradict that parent. Instead, you and mom should be working together as a parenting team and should stand by each other's decisions. That said, it's important that you talk these decisions beforehand so that you don't end up having to support a decision you strongly disagree with. I don't know if I miss him. I've said I've lost him years and years before his actual death, and in spite of the anger I felt after hearing the news, I recognize I went through a real mourning period. His death signified the final loss of potential. There was no longer any possibility of having a socially expected, normal relationship with my father. He's dead, and he can't be any less dead. I can't do anything with that. Theoretically, he would be in heaven. He was baptized, and from what I understand based on my own evangelical upbringing, he did the right things to ensure his acceptance. If such a place exists, I wonder if he can see me now. I wonder how he is reacting to me slurring my words, trying to understand who he was. I wonder what he would have to say to my performance tonight. At the very least, I hope he knows I don't fully blame him for all my insecurities, anxieties, and other issues I deal with on a daily basis. I am not the product of my father alone. That much I know for sure.